all ate those together before the game and then watched the game together. It was it was a good, if somewhat nervous build-up, particularly after the last derby, where Wigan won reasonably comfortably, actually, in the end, after a very tough first half. So I wasn't able to call the game beforehand, and I wasn't able to call the game during the game, and even with the second to go, I couldn't call the game. So, neither side deserved to lose. That's the reality. Sadly, sport, and it's a cruel mistress stroke absolutely beautiful. Cross out whichever one of those you're on the wrong end of or the right end of. In any sport, there are three things that raise it above the norm. One is an amazing comeback, something like Ben Stokes' innings at Leeds last year. Another is an underdog coming and winning a game you just don't expect. Something like Sheffield Eagles, Mark beating Wigan in the Challenge Cup final. And then the other is an ending like this. Something that's just so unscripted, bizarre, involves a huge amount of luck, actually, in the end. And can just, it brings heartbreak and tragedy on one side and triumph and an unbelievable explosion of joy on the other, and that was it. It could have easily gone the other way around, and I could have been miserable. And certainly, Mark, you'd have never got me on this show if that had happened to my team. So I have to tell you, I wouldn't have wanted anything to do with rugby league for quite a long time after that. So all the credit to you for being able to put this show together tonight.
I think it's, I think it has. It certainly the last 20 minutes, the last 10 minutes, the last 3 minutes, the last 12 seconds, whatever you want to break it down to on this game, is one of those things that true sporting fans can only appreciate, no matter what sport is your preferred sport. You would hope, I don't know because we don't live outside the rugby league bubble, you would hope that this filtered further into the sporting consciousness, given how spectacular it was. But at the same time, that just means that everyone I fucking know is going to want to talk to me about it when I'm back at work tomorrow.
Yes, it is. It's for the neutrals and for the Saints fans, it's an absolutely magical piece of sport, but for Wigan fans, it's clearly going to be extremely painful until you've got the opportunity to erase it from the memory banks by getting back out on the field and playing again. And sadly, that's 3 months away, Mark, which is, at the moment must seem like a bloody eternity.
Nah, that's all right. I'll distract myself with something else, I'm sure. But let's run the rule over the game together then. The first half, probably not a huge amount of talking points.
No, not really.
Well, I was worried that we wouldn't get to see much of James Graham in that early injury he picked up that looked initially quite nasty. I was worried that might be him done very early doors, and that could be the end of it.
Well, I suppose that was the sort of thing to pull from the first half then, Tim, wasn't it? A good starting point. A few injuries in there. So Graham and Walmsley didn't look fit, did they? That's, I think, the first thing to kind of pull out from a Saints perspective. Saints had all the ball and a lot of the territory, but did not have the same sort of punch from Walmsley and Graham you would expect. Is that fair to say?
I think
that's right. Sorry,
I don't think either would have played in a regular round game. I think this was it's a grand final. I've got one more week to get myself through. Give me as much legal medication as I can take, and off I go, kind of thing.
And from the Wigan side of things as well, Joe Burgess got a head knock, kind of unlucky victim of the intensity of the defensive work in that game from his teammates. He ended up with a broken jaw, but no concussion, which is good for him that he was able to get back onto the pitch. But But yeah, that on both sides we could see the heroic. I don't want to use the word warriors in the sense of my team. I mean, for the 34 guys out there, they were all absolutely going through the battle, and both sides picking up injuries in that first 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, since the game, it's been announced that Walmsley had torn his knee cartilage in the semi-final. So he was playing with his patella sort of partly hanging off, kind of strapped it into place and hope for the best.
Ow. Ow. So, as someone who's done pretty much that, ow.
So and Oliver Gildart broke his thumb as well as as Joe Burgess breaking his jaw as well. So fucking brutal stuff. Those guys are real physical examples of what you can achieve.
It wasn't just the physicality. It was just relentless. Neither side were really making errors. There were not lots of penalties. And it was just relentless set for set. And the pressure and intensity with no score on the board, and everyone feeling it was going to be a low-scoring game. It must have been an amazingly difficult game to play in. You must have been terrified at any moment that you were going to be the one person to make the error that was going to break the game open. And there we go. So it was even though there wasn't lots of free-flowing rugby, it was incredibly intense. I was exhausted at half-time just from watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. Emotionally drained already at that point. So Wigan didn't get into the Saints' half at all in that first 20 minutes when these injuries started to appear on both sides. Then Joe Burgess went off. Wigan had to do a bit of a switch around, but actually managed to get some territory finally, and created the first real chance of the game. And up to this point of the game, it had been Wigan's resolute defence in their own end of the field that had been probably the most impressive thing, even though Saints' ability to restrict Wigan's any sort of getting out of their own end from Wigan was equally as impressive. But then the first real show of defensive grit from St Helens, I suppose, after Wigan had defended their own line, David, when Zach Hardacre got through off a good break by Oliver Gildart, put him through, but Saints covering defence held him up.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember exactly how many players got there, but it was at least 4.
Yeah.
So Hardacre surged over the line, showed great strength to get himself over the line. Within a millisecond, there were 4 players pulling his arm up and holding the ball off the floor and getting themselves underneath. So it was a great bit of play by Hardacre and a great bit of defence by Saints.
How did you feel at that stage? Because you'd had all the field position, most of the ball, yet you hadn't created a sliver of a chance, and Wigan created a chance on their first attack.
Yeah, so I was worried. I mean, I think it was concerning that whilst we had a lot of the territory, we weren't finding a quicker. Saints typically use sort of fast play the balls to try and get a broken field, try and get the defence not set properly at the back, and then you've got people like Lomax and Coote and so on pouring through the little holes that you get in defensive lines and popping players away on the outside. There was none of that. We didn't get any room on the outside. We couldn't get Wigan's defence going backwards. We couldn't get breaks in the shape in the line to create things. So I was worried because Hardacre had clearly got himself over the line. We defended it, but you could see quite easily that any moment, one error, one slip, and the pitch was greasy. One slip, one bit of a mistimed tackle, Nagama coming out of the line as he tends to do, and then missing his tackle, and Wigan could score. And if you did score, and I was concerned, if you got your noses in front, we might find it very difficult to get back.
Well, Wigan got another chance, didn't they? An uncharacteristic error from Lachlan Coote. Looking around to his winger, who he probably seemed to think was the man who should have gone for the ball, but it wouldn't have been an uncharacteristic error the other way. But an uncharacteristic error from Lachlan Coote set Wigan up with the ball 30 metres out, but Wigan, on the second play, a very loose pass from Sean O'Loughlin in his final game will be something that he'll think about, I think, and be disappointed about. Gave up that pressure straight away. So nothing came of that. And Alan, at that point, the 0-0 that you were suspecting might happen at half time looked on. So what did you make of the opening half?
It felt very... I made a note, same as you did, Wigan's first chance, which was the 22nd minute. The individual kind of effort to stop Hardacre was outstanding, without question. That was the best individual piece of defensive work. But it was a bit, for me, it was a combination. Wigan were incredibly difficult to break down, but at the same time, Saints weren't pushing the envelope. There were lots of very short kicks that didn't even make it to the try line. It was like they were
the kicking game was poor from Saints.
The kicking game was poor, but it felt like they were, one, trying to avoid 7 tackle sets, and 2, to stop Bevan French having any space. It was like they were happily to turn it over to him and meet it from his own line with players around him. So that felt like it was a very conservative plan, but it stymied their ability to force any kind of attack that they might usually do. But yeah, it was close. But I've got to say, I think the shoulder charge for the penalty was stupid from Smithers. That was kind of out of character from the rest of the performance in many ways. I mean, Isa had his moments, but that felt like it was the one piece of play that Wigan are probably very disappointed with.
From my perspective, from the Wigan perspective, I was just really frustrated with the kid. It was like he was just wanting to leave a little bit on, when if he'd have actually gone into the tackle properly, there wouldn't have been a penalty, because he timed it okay. It was just the fact that he turned his body and went into him with his shoulder that was the problem, compared to what had been a sequence of both sides putting a lot of pressure on the kickers in similar sort of positions to that. So that was probably
about the third or fourth one that was very close to the line, and it was almost like Kendall kind of had snapped at that point. Now you don't really know what level of warning he'd given and to clamp down on that, but it did feel like that was the one that went, whereas there were other ones that were close enough to it.
You could tell that O'Loughlin asked him what was the difference between that one and the others, and Kendall's response was that one was the shoulder.
Shoulder charge.
Yeah. And no one can argue with that at all. It was just the kind of things that a kid who we all loved for the way he played last year when he was brand new into things. Maybe we're hoping for a bit more maturity from him as he kind of progressed this year, and we haven't quite seen that yet. So it's something for him to work on. We've seen other players work on those sorts of things, and he's still only very, very young. So I'm sure he will. But yeah, it led to 2-0 at half time basically. And do we all think that sort of was a reasonable reflection on the first half? Saints probably just edged it purely because they had a lot more field position and a bit more possession, even though Wigan probably looked more dangerous.
I think it was that attritional part of it that Saints just went through set after set. And to be fair, Wigan just defended as a really cohesive unit, that they weren't going to let anything through. As you mentioned about that tactic from Saints of kicking so that they didn't leave the back three in space, because any one of those three getting space was going to cause some sort of problem. So I think that was a deliberate tactic to try and close the space down coming back. But I mean, it was just fantastic to watch and just absolutely engrossing as a one half. And I thought that was the best half we were going to see all year.
Well, the first half between the two last time they played, like David referenced before, was absolutely fantastic, and this was so similar to it. really. And David, you started the second half quite similarly to the first half.